Welcome to Shift Happens, where we discuss all things yoga, creating transformative experiences on the mat, off the mat, and on the path of yoga, with your host, International Yogini, Mimi Adeogba.
Hi, and welcome to Shift Happens with your host, International Yogini Mimi, where we discuss all things yoga and experiences on the mat, off the mat, and on the path of yoga. Good morning. So today I have my special guest and one of my first and earliest yoga students, Kelly Lynn Prime, energy healer extraordinaire and yogini extraordinaire as well. Now, hi Kelly, welcome to the show.
Hi Mimi, thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm honored.
You're welcome. So I'd like to ask you to share with our audience today a little bit about yourself. Who is Kelly Lynn Prime?
So what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about my path to yoga through Mimi. So I am a former high school language arts teacher, and in 2011 I stopped teaching school, and I stopped teaching school to pursue my path into the healing arts. I had been learning energy healing, and I was a little fed up with the public school system, so I said it's time for me to make my departure and go in a different direction that fed my soul in a more meaningful way. So fast forward to 2015. Did we meet in 2015?
I think it was 2015.
I think it was 2015.
Yes.
And Mimi had walked the Camino
de Compostela de Santiago in Spain.
Yes, so she had walked that in Spain, and she developed plantar fasciitis.
Ah, yes, I remember that.
So I had some background in reflexology and energy healing, and Mimi said, well, we can trade. I'll teach you yoga, and you can do energy healing with me. And I said, it's a deal. So we started doing reflexology and energy healing for Mimi's feet, and I started learning yoga. And I had dabbled in yoga a little bit, but Mimi instilled in me that yoga really needed to be a regular part of my life because I just really enjoyed it. It was amazing. And fast forward a couple years more, Mimi decided she was going to go to India to continue her yoga teacher education. And there came a point, and I said, Mimi, who's going to teach your classes while you're gone? Because Mimi was doing some independent contracting work. And she said, you are. You're going to teach my classes because I'm going to teach you how to teach them.
Why not?
Now, here's the catch. Folks, Mimi was supposed to be gone for 5 weeks. Mimi didn't come back for an entire year. So I went from teaching 3 classes a week to 5 classes a week to 6 classes a week to about 7 classes a week. And this is before I had even done my yoga teacher training. So
that is hilarious.
That gives credence to the type of foundation that Mimi set up for me, that she set me up to be a successful teacher without having formal yoga teacher training, and I'm using air quotes around that. So, I taught for an entire year of yoga, a year and some change before I did a formal yoga teacher training.
It sounds like you loved it so much that you decided to formalize it.
Exactly. And it was something that I knew to, especially in the States, to legitimize myself as a teacher. Because, believe it or not, most places never asked me for my yoga certification.
You just had the skill set.
I just I guess I had the look and the vibration that, oh, she knows what she's doing. So
In the mobile yoga studio.
Yes, the mobile yoga studio. Mimi set me up with that too. I had the blocks, the bands, the blankets, the mats, all of that. I could go where I could take yoga wherever I went. So I've received a lot. I've received a lot from Mimi as a teacher and as a friend. So
Thank you.
I appreciate all that you have done for me, yoga and un-yoga related.
It has been my pleasure to share this journey with you.
Thank you. So that gives you a little bit of background about who I am, and I'm continuing to teach. I'm still an independent contractor in the Atlanta area, and I teach about 14 classes a week now.
And there you have it. That's Kelly Lynn 5, Yogini extraordinaire.
Trained by Yogini Mimi.
Yours truly. So you clearly have been impacted by your journey. What is yoga to you? Share with our audience.
So there's some formal definitions of yoga that I think I want to share, and I'll infuse what it means to me in with that. So yoga means to yoke and to join things together. So for me, I think one of the major things that yoga did for me was it created an opportunity for me to yoke movement and breath together. And it really wasn't until after my yoga teacher training that I really experienced the power of breath. And it actually happened during the final weekend of my yoga teacher training. My teacher, Laura Clower, she had these two women come in and do a breathwork circle as a gift to her students. She had a chiropractor come in and do some really neat stuff. But the breath work was so powerful, and it really showed me the importance of breath and the depths that breath can take you into yourself to release trauma, to release, there's so many things that stay pent up in our body from traumas that we've experienced, and the movement with the breath is, I think, a really important piece in letting shit go. And I say that in jest because when I think of shift happens, there's a small F in the title. So it's like, oh, shift happens. Yes, okay, I get it.
All the pun in the world intended. Because yoga really is a transformative experience.
It is.
Yeah.
So during the first month of my yoga teacher training, and I dabble a little with all things spiritual. So during the first month of my yoga teacher training, for the last 2.5 years, I was going through my Saturn return. And if you don't know what that means, you can look that up. It's an astrology thing. But
I'll let Kelly plug her website.
When Saturn goes through its transit in your sign, it's bringing all of your stuff up. So during the first month of my yoga teacher training, I did not have, and we were required to practice a minimum of 3 times a week in the studio. I cried every single practice for a month.
But yoga is a cleansing practice.
It totally is.
Asana.
And it was beautiful. I got to a point where when the tears came, I'd be like, okay, here we go again. Let this stuff go.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's intended
so
for.
it was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience.
That is beautiful. Did you have any other insights or any other awakenings around what yoga is to you?
One thing that I didn't know that yoga was until I did yoga teacher training is that, and I knew it, but it didn't register with me. The asana, the poses, the practice is preparation for meditation.
Mm.
And that is so not emphasized at all in the West, not in America anyways.
I'm glad you said that. I've been having conversations with a lot of yoginis where we look at yoga as it is referred to in the West, and the realization is there that isn't it asana? Isn't it asana, which is 1/8 of what yoga is, according to what Patanjali Yoga Sutras explains is yoga? Because if you think about it with that perspective, traditional, historic perspective, we're talking over 6,000-year-old tradition. What we brought to the West really is a watered-down version of yoga with a primary emphasis on asana. So shouldn't we be calling what we do in the West asana rather than yoga? Because yoga is the yamas, the niyamas, the asana, the pranayama, the pratyahara, the dharana, the dhyana, and the samadhi, which is the 8 limbs. More on that later.
So I've also been before I did this type of hatha yoga teacher training, I did arhatic yoga training. It's not teacher training. It's just arhatic yoga is it's meditative practices that are emphasized in the modality that I studied the longest, which is pranic healing. Mm-hmm. And it's a modality of energy healing. So I learned when I was introduced to arhatic yoga that it's a yoking, and it doesn't necessarily, yoga doesn't necessarily mean the poses, because there's no well, there are exercises that are emphasized to do before any of the pranic healing meditations. You do them before and you do them after, and it helps to to actualize the energy in your body. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I knew that meditation came after the movement, but when I got to that point in my hatha yoga teacher training, I was like, oh, you know this. Mm-hmm. You know this. You have forgotten. Yeah,
and that brings me to my next question. So in your experience, cultivating this awareness, you went through a yoga teacher training course. So what is the yoga teacher training course? Why did you eventually decide that route?
Well, to be honest, I knew that yoga was an ancient practice and philosophy, and I wanted access to that because I know the power of the philosophy and the unseen parts of everything, because everything is energy, and yes. Energy is not always seen, but energy is felt. Mm-hmm. So it was a feeling that I knew that I needed to legitimize myself as a teacher in the eyes of society, and for myself, that I knew that I wanted to go in that direction and have access to the deeper philosophical foundations of what yoga is. So that's part of the reason why I took yoga teacher training, but the main reason was so that I could have a
piece of paper
certificate and have people take me seriously as a teacher in America. And I mean, I know that sounds like a cheapening of it, but it's true, and it's what's required in America for people to take you seriously.
So what would you say to somebody who is inspired by you and they come to you and they ask you, what is yoga teacher training? What would you tell them?
I would say that it's an opportunity to get to know yourself, and especially with yoga teacher training. So what happens on the mat is a microcosm of what happens in your life, how you handle stress, how you handle circumstances. So I use that in my class very often, that, whatever's happening on your mat, that's how you're handling it on your mat is how you handle it in life. So if you want to handle it differently in life, then let's start making shifts on the mat, because shift happens.
Shift happens. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives.
Thank you for inviting me to share my perspectives.
Okay, so I'm totally going to close out the show, but I do have one last minute. So what is your favorite yoga pose? Asana.
So my favorite yoga pose, I would say, is Malasana or garland pose. And I love it because it's also a position where it's important as women that we take care of our yonis, that we take care of our sexual health. And it's a position where you can do Kegels as you breathe. So I love that. I love that there's a more internal thing that's going on, and nobody knows when you're doing Kegels in Malasana.
Yes.
And I love that my hips are open enough that I can damn near touch the ground with my bum. And so I just really enjoy that pose. It just feels really open to me.
I love it. Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Yogini Kelly Lynn Prime on Shift Happens with International Yogini Mimi. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio today. I really appreciate your feedback and your story and everything that you have experienced. And I'm sure our listeners do too.
You've been listening to Shift Happens with International Yogini Mimi Adeogba. To learn how to build your own yoga brand while creating transformative learning experiences for others, or to listen to past episodes, go to yoginimimi.com.